So Gears of War E-Day had its big reveal this week. They showed off a ton of stuff as part of their direct. Honestly, like so much that it's like, I feel like you could watch that and probably need to know everything you need to know about this game.
Nice.
But I did get the chance to talk to some of the developers behind the game in a little presentation. They had some nice PowerPoint slides and showed us some additional little footage and stuff. And I feel like I learned a couple of new things that I don't think were mentioned in the direct. So I wanted to take the opportunity to give you guys some little extra information. So first off, I want to talk about the city of Kelowna, which is where the entirety of Gears of War E-Day takes place. Something that they said that I thought was really fascinating is that they actually like built the entire city like in the game. Like they said that if you were to take like the Unreal, put it in the game in like an Unreal Engine like editor and like zoom out, you can actually see the entire city that like the game takes place in. That doesn't mean that it is an open world game or anything like that, but what it does mean is that they actually bothered to kind of fully realize this as like a living city with like different districts and setups and structures. And the reason why that's cool is because over the course of the 3 days this game takes place in, you will actually be returning to different locations that you were in, and you will like see how they have changed over the course of the game. So for example, like a bridge that you cross at one point, you might come back to and now that bridge is on fire, or a building is completely gone. So they seem to be doing a lot of work to really make sure that the city feels like a real place. Another thing they talked about was these sections in the game that they described as wide linear, where you actually have like a little bit more freedom in how you approach them. The game is still ultimately a linear game. You might be thinking about how in Gears 5, they also had these sort of wide linear sections where you would like, you know, go around the desert and there were like little side objectives. They said it's not exactly like that. That was more giant open spaces. Instead, this is more like you will have a city block that has just all these different alleyways and is very dense, and you can kind of choose how you traverse this block. And so there's like a freedom in the space. The space is larger. So it's kind of like they took what they thought worked really well from the ideas of the kind of open areas from Gears 5, but kind of like have more focused and honed it into this urban environment. They also said that the game does have a good amount of freedom in terms of how the players themselves can kind of choose whether they want to stick together or if they want to split up. That's a very classic Gears mechanic where you would be like given the choice, do you want to go left or right, and the co-op partners would split up. There are specific story missions where that will happen, but they also said that there's just because the areas are so big that you can just naturally choose at any point like, hey, I'm gonna go in this direction and I'm gonna go in this direction, and given like freedom in how you want to approach that. Okay, let's talk mechanics. They did mention that they are improving the active reload and applying some new mechanics based on certain weapons. They did not get into specifics about that, so I'm not really sure exactly what that could be, but I do think that's interesting that they are continuing to kind of evolve the active reload. The other thing they mentioned that I thought was interesting was that you'll notice in the footage that the active reload is now kind of like in the bottom center of the screen, not in like the top where it was before. They did say you can go in the settings and you can change the UI to be at the top if you prefer, sort of like that classic Gears UI positioning. Speaking of control changes, they also mentioned that you can tweak the controls in the way like cover works, because so like for example, the way it currently works is when you do things like a slide into cover, it automatically does it. It's just kind of, they said that felt like the most natural, but if you're somebody who wants more granular control over like when you go into cover, when you go out of cover, you can actually change that in the settings. We're getting real specific here, folks. Something I also thought was interesting they said is, so they showed off the new jump mechanic in the game, like Marcus can jump now. Incredible, right? But they did want to stress that it's more about like providing alternatives in a combat space, and you know, like things like flanking, and that like the game isn't suddenly turning into like a platformer, for example. In the direct, they showed off all of the like classic Gears enemies, and you know, a lot of them have kind of been retooled and changed. As a specific example, they showed off the wretches, and the wretches in E-Day, they don't have like that big bulky armor on them, and they're a lot lankier and they're a lot paler. And apparently, like, there's like a lore reason where the locusts like would like intentionally like put these wretches in cages and like starve them, so that when they release them upon Sarah, they would just like go feral and nuts and like kill as many people as possible, which is so gross. This game is apparently the most violent Gears of War game they've ever made. They said so many people die in this game, so I expect this game to be a lot. As far as other enemy stuff, they did say that there are new enemy types, but we didn't get a chance to see what those are. But there will be new locusts that we have not seen in previous games. If you're like a lore junkie and you're like, well, hold on, how can there be new enemies if they weren't in the later games? And they kind of just, like the excuse is that, well, it's, 15 years between, and it's not far of a stretch to imagine that there would have been like certain locust enemy types that would have appeared 15 years ago that maybe just didn't happen to be around, in the later games, which I think is fine. It's a video game. You want new things in it, right? One thing they said that I thought was interesting is, so the Reavers are in this game, and in Gears of War, the other Gears of War games, Reavers were a little more like scripted when they would show up, and they land on the ground and you would just kind of shoot them. In this, Reavers actually also kind of operate in a similar fashion to the emergence holes, where they can like land on the ground and like drop off a bunch of troops and then go back up in the air. So like there's like this other way in which they can like deliver more enemies into the battlefield. Other thing I learned, cog tags are a thing again. They said there are the most collectibles in this game out of any game they've made, and that the cog tags actually have more story significance, because a lot of the cog tags will have names associated with them, and they will often be names of people that you actually have like seen in the game, because this is like the first time that the locusts are showing up. So you will like fight with a soldier, and then that soldier will die, and then later you will like collect their dog tag. So it's this little way of trying to sort of like fill out the world and make like all of these little smaller characters around you like feel important, and you're like feeling the weight of the impact of what is happening. Obviously, the original voices for Marcus and Dom are back. They did say that Ty was recast. I think his new voice actor sounds pretty good. They also confirmed that fan favorites like Cole and Baird will not appear in this game. That is because this game takes place entirely from the perspective of Marcus and Dom did not meet Cole and Baird until Gears of War 1, so they will not be showing up. Although Cole is a very famous person in the Gears of War universe, so I wouldn't be surprised if he makes an appearance in some other fashion. As far as the length of the game goes, they did say this is the longest Gears of War game they've ever made, and that it's about over 14 hours, that sounds pretty meaty. Okay, last couple really quick things. They said that they developed this with Xbox handhelds in mind, so that means it should probably run pretty good on like an Xbox ROG Ally. It is also on Steam, so hopefully it runs okay on a Steam Deck if that's what you have. That's my handheld of choice. And speaking of Steam, they did confirm the game has crossplay, the game has cross saves, and the game has cross progression between those versions. So if you play the game on Steam or on Xbox or on like Windows PC, like you'll be able to play it with anyone else who has a copy. So those are all the little tidbits that I learned from my time talking with the developers of Gears of WarEDay. Hopefully you learned something new that you didn't know before. I am excited to get my hands on and actually like try the game out for myself. I think it looks excellent. I love Gears of War, and I actually like genuinely I think this game looks incredibly impressive. So I am looking forward to checking it out. And if you are looking forward to checking it out, you should stay here at GameSpot, because guess what? We're probably going to be covering this and all the other games that are happening right now. A lot of games. Go video games.